Subcommittee on Coast Guard and Maritime Transportation will come to order. I ask that unanimous consent that the chairman be authorized to declare a recess at any time during today's hearing without objection, so that ordered. I ask unanimous consent that the members not on the subcommittee be permitted to sit with the subcommittee at today's hearing and ask questions without objection, so that ordered. As a reminder, if members insert a document into the record, please also email that document to tni@mail.house.gov. Okay, so now I recognize myself for the purpose of opening statement for 5 minutes. Today, our subcommittee meets to highlight the extraordinary success of the men and women of Coast Guard. At the same time, we're here to examine what investments could be made or must be made in order to keep the Coast Guard as our most valuable resource, its people. So I'd like to welcome today our witnesses, Vice Admiral Thomas Allen, Jr. Thank you for coming. And also we have our Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, Chief Heath Jones. Thanks for coming. Master Chief, I'm sorry. First, I would like to thank the 4 junior enlisted men and women, the members of the Coast Guard, who just finished a lunch with them, and they gave us some awesome information, and really appreciate it. I thought it was very helpful, maybe even in the future. So we had Chief Petty Officer Casper and Chief Petty Officer Sizer, Ford, and Willis, all great examples of how of the many Coast Guard enlisted members who make the service work every day. I applaud them for their service. At every rank, Coast Guard members perform an extraordinary task in service to our nation. Nearly every week, there's a news article highlighting the heroics, I guess, their work, conducting search and rescue operations, life-threatening conditions, executing perilous high-speed drug interceptions, supporting the United States scientific community through ice-breaking operations in most of the remote regions on the earth. So they're just an awesome group. One of the greatest strengths of the Coast Guard is its people. Coast Guard members are resilient, capable, skilled, motivated, but as the Commandant has said, the readiness of Coast Guard depends on its ability to support its people. The support should be include a well-maintained physical assets like capable ships, aircraft, infrastructure. Must be also extended to personnel factors like housing, medical care, schooling, and child care that influence the decision of members and their families to join or to remain in the Coast Guard. Regrettably, many of these areas of the Coast Guard has room for improvement. Chronic underfunding by presidents and Congresses have left shoreside facilities like housing in disrepair, child care options are scarce, and aging assets are the norm. Short nearly 10% of its workforce and facing ongoing recruiting and retention struggles, prioritization of well-meaning Sentinels is more important now than ever. I encourage to hear that you're on track to reach this year's goal. That's awesome. Can't stop. Keep going. It's time to put the foot on the gas and keep the pedal to the metal as the workforce shortages still remain. So today I look forward to hearing how the Coast Guard is taking care of its members and their families so that we can be a better employer and be the employer of choice. On that note, while it's not the purpose of this hearing, the Coast Guard recently informed this committee that not only has it failed to produce statutory required acquisition planning documents for the last 9 years, there's also no intention of submitting a major acquisition program report for any point in the future. Similarly, We are still awaiting the fiscal year 2024, fiscal year 2025 capital assets plans. As a law enforcement agency, the Coast Guard cannot just pick and choose what laws they're going to follow because they have to set an example. A long-term acquisition plan is essential to providing Coast Guard members with the assets and support that they need to do their missions, as both the lunch earlier today and this hearing will probably highlight. If the Coast Guard maintains its stance, it's unable to produce this information, we have no choice but to consider its inability to conduct meaningful acquisition planning in its future authorizations. This is my warning to the Coast Guard. Please start saving yourselves from your own sinking ship. Really be helpful. To our witnesses, thank you for being here. Thank you for preparation for today. This committee truly believes that you represent the world's best Coast Guard. Today, we hope to hear how Congress can help keep that tradition alive. And now, are you going to talk?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll yield. Of course, I want to talk, but I will yield to our ranking member Larson.
Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ranking Member, thank you for calling today's hearing. So earlier this afternoon, we had an opportunity to sit down with enlisted members of the Coast Guard to hear their thoughts, their concerns, their adventures, their violation of Coast Guard policy, and getting things done. I say that with some jest, because what we heard is that sometimes to do their job, they got to go outside policy to save lives, and saving lives is what the Coast Guard does. Hearing directly from enlisted personnel is incredibly helpful as this committee conducts oversight and it crafts policy affecting the service. I want to thank the Coast Guard for making these coasties available to us. Take a moment to recognize and celebrate their incredible work with us over lunch of all of our Coast Guard enlisted personnel. So over the course of this Congress, I've taken the opportunity as well to visit coasties across the country in New London, in Pensacola, Maui, Baltimore, Grand Haven, Chicago, and various places in Alaska as well. It's been an invaluable experience. I encourage my colleagues to see as much of the Coast Guard as possible. These women and men are really unsung heroes responsible for safeguarding our coasts and our people. They risk their lives conducting search and rescue operations, intercepting drug traffickers, and ensuring the safety of our coastal communities. Their dedication and bravery exemplify the highest ideals of the service. So I want to say thank you to all the service members that joined us today and to all the coasties for your service. In my own state of Washington, there are about 2,300 enlisted Coast Guard personnel. These dedicated individuals play a crucial role in responding to emergencies, enforcing laws, and protecting the natural resources in the region. From the very busy ports in Seattle and Portland, Seattle and Tacoma and Everett, and probably Portland too, to the rugged shores of the San Juan Islands, their presence ensures that our maritime environment remains safe and secure. As Coast Guard members serve our country with distinction, it's our responsibility, therefore, to ensure they have the resources they need, including affordable housing, essential health services, childcare, and up-to-date cutters, aircraft, and technology. Due to the unique mission of the service, the Coast Guard stations are often in remote or high-cost coastal areas. So the stress of expensive housing takes a toll on service member well-being and overall readiness. Limited Coast Guard-owned housing and Department of Defense's Basic Allowance for Housing, or BAH, which does not appropriately consider Coast Guard locations, forces personnel to find more affordable housing with longer commutes. On health care, the Coast Guard does offer health care benefits, but the accessibility and quality of care is inconsistent. To many personnel, they face long wait times for appointments and limited access to specialized care. So our coasties deserve not only a robust healthcare system, but also the access to other mental health, other services like behavioral health services that meet their needs promptly and effectively. According to the Coast Guard Foundation, in 2022, Coast Guard members died from suicide twice as often as their peers in other military services. So investing in behavioral health and mental health is not just a moral obligation, it's critical to save the lives of our coasties. Many enlisted personnel are also parents who juggle demanding work schedules with family responsibilities. The service members often have difficulty finding affordable and reliable childcare, which has a direct impact on their ability to do their jobs. So while funding was provided in the bipartisan infrastructure law to build 4 new child development centers in areas like Kodiak, the Coast Guard has struggled with staffing. This limits the number of dependents who can enroll and forces members to look elsewhere for childcare, something that can be very difficult in more remote areas. And finally, while we take pride in remarkable contributions of our people, we have to provide them with the tools and resources they need for the job. The Coast Guard has been too slow to adopt new technology, in fact. In wake of a personnel shortage of nearly 10%, the service must take advantage of all available technology to effectively conduct missions and prevent burnout. Increased adoption of remote sensors, autonomous systems, and AI tools could help to relieve pressure on a strained workforce. Unfortunately, these technologies require funding, which we have not provided in recent years. So it's clear we have a responsibility to ensure that those who are dedicating their lives to protecting us receive the resources and support they need to thrive, both on duty and off duty. So I take the opportunity when I can to see Coast Guard stations across the country. I've seen firsthand the challenges our coasties are facing. Meeting with enlisted members like this afternoon was extremely helpful, much more exciting than having a hearing, honestly. And I encourage all my colleagues to visit the Coast Guard, get out on the water, get up in the air with them, as I did in Pensacola, to truly see the value that they provide to our country. With that, I yield back.
Ranking Member Larson, the full committee yields back. So the ranking member from the subcommittee, Mr. Carbajal, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Webster, for having this hearing, and to all our witnesses that are here, Master Chief Jones and Vice Admiral Allen. I must say before we move on that Ranking Member Larson has brought the fanny pack back into fashion all by himself. I don't know if anybody knows that. I just thought I'd codify that on the record. Over the past 3 years, I've had the opportunity to visit Coast Guard stations across the country. I've been on icebreakers, national security cutters, fast response cutters, various aircraft, and small vessels. Each visit has left me with a sense of deep appreciation for what the Coasties do for our country every single day. I'm sure that anyone who has a chance to interact with members of the Coast Guard feels the same way. As ranking member of this subcommittee, I take my role of the Coast Guard promoter very seriously. I recognize the Coast Guard is the premier agency tasked with protecting the American people and safeguarding our national security interests along our shores and beyond. I understand the tremendous value that the service provides to the community when Coasties fulfill the diverse missions across the United States and the globe. The service is only successful, though, because of its service members. They are there when a boater or swimmer gets into trouble. They prevent drugs being smuggled across the sea from harming our communities. They intercept migrants who are trafficked across our maritime border when their lives are placed at risk by transnational criminal organizations. They protect our precious ecosystem from harm by preventing oil from spilling into our waters and jeopardizing coastal economies. They demand excellence in maintaining sustainable fisheries when those fisheries are threatened by illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing operations. And they uphold the flow of American goods and commerce. The Coast Guard is always ready and always there. Coasties are semper paratus. But as the service is always there and always ready to serve the American people, so too must Congress be there for the Coast Guard. I am working to ensure the Coast Guard receives the funding and support it needs to execute each of its vital missions. This means not only providing the resources for new classes of cutters, assets, and facilities, but also investing in people, the very fabric of the service. As a veteran myself, I have always been proud to represent our service members in Congress. As a longtime resident and representative of the Central Coast of California, I know firsthand the challenges that our coasties and their families face. Many coasties are forced to live hours from their duty stations because there is insufficient housing. They often travel unacceptable distances to visit doctors. Coasties have limited access to childcare, which often results in couples alternating parenting duties based on their work schedules or being forced to quit altogether. These challenges weigh on the mental and physical welfare of coasties. We must do better. Despite these challenges, the Coast Guard is always ready and always there. For that, I and the American people are forever grateful. However, I recognize that gratitude alone does not pay the bills. I have major concerns about the funding needed to keep up with the backlog in infrastructure, the investment in the new assets such as cutters and helicopters, and everyday support services to the fleet, or recruitment, retention, and the success of every mission depends on it. This subcommittee is hard at work to make sure that your needs are recognized. To the coasties who joined us today and across the world, thank you for all of your unconditional service to our nation. I am proud to advocate for America's great Coast Guard and look forward to the testimony today to hear about how Congress can do better to support the service. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Okay, well, I'd like to welcome again our witnesses and thank them for being here today. Really appreciate it. Briefly, I'd like to take this moment to explain our lighting system. Green means go, yellow means slow down, red means stop. Pretty simple. And we're going to kind of stick to that. I ask unanimous consent that the witnesses' full statements be included in the record without objection. Show that order. I ask for unanimous consent that the record of today's hearings be open until such time as the witnesses have provided answers to any questions that may have been submitted to them. Without objection, show that ordered. Also ask for unanimous consent the record remain open for 15 days for any additional comments. And if information submitted by members or witnesses to be included in today's record hearing. Without objection, show that done. So as your written testimony has been made a part of the record, committee asks you to limit your speaking time to 5 minutes. And with that, Vice Admiral Allen, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chairman Webster, Ranking Member Larson, Ranking Member Carvajal, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today on this important topic. The U.S. Coast Guard is one of the world's premier multi-mission maritime services responsible for safety, security, and stewardship of our nation's waters. Our 58,000 members conduct dynamic homeland security and defense missions around the globe, 24/7, 365 days a year. As a Deputy Commandant for Mission Support, it is my duty to make certain these members have the needs to remain always ready. Our workforce is the heart of the Coast Guard. Every day, our people put their lives on the line to protect, defend, and save. They are operating under the strain of one of the largest workforce shortages of our 234-year history. Even though the Coast Guard achieved its active duty recruiting goals for the first time since 2017 and met all the goals for officers enlisted and reservist sessions for the first time since 2007, we must continue to work to find new ways to make the Coast Guard a place people want to come to work, to excel, to have a career, and to deliver the mission our nations expect. To remain the world's greatest Coast Guard, we must retain our most precious resource, our workforce. We must clarify and fortify our core values for our crews, and we must invest in a talent management system that cultivates the individual and collective skills the service needs. Our efforts to upgrade our human resource IT system will enable a more robust system to effectively capture unique aspects of our personnel and better match their talents to service needs. Our modernized training system must deliver personalized, on-demand training and ensure the continuous professional development of our workforce. The Coast Guard training centers are the foundations of our workforce. We greatly appreciate Congress's recent investments in recruit barracks at Training Center Cape May, where all Coast Guard enlisted members start their service and receive their basic training. The Coast Guard Academy is operating with outdated facilities plagued by mold and asbestos. We need your support to facilitate critical improvements at both Cape May and the Academy, investments vital to developing our world-class workforce. The Coast Guard is unique among the military services. Our members are widely dispersed and embedded in small communities throughout the nation, often far removed from large military installations and those amenities. Supporting our geographically dispersed workforce is critical. Access to quality health care, both mental and physical, is one of the most significant issues currently facing Coast Guard families. With the help of Congress, we expanded behavioral health resources and now have enlisted behavioral health technicians and mental behavioral health providers serving at units across the nation. Housing remains a concern as well. Many of our members are assigned to remote vacation destinations with scarce and expensive rental options. We are incredibly thankful for your support for our housing projects. We have much work ahead, but with Congress's essential support, we can ensure Coast Guard members are focused on critical missions, reassured their health and family needs are well supported. We must properly recruit, train, and equip our workforce to maintain mission excellence. With your support and the Commandant's focus on leadership and culture at all levels of the organization, we can strengthen recruitment, modernize talent management, expand support services, and guarantee that our members are physically, mentally, and spiritually well prepared to execute their duties. Together, we can build a Coast Guard that remains always ready to meet the challenges our nation will face in the years ahead. Thank you for the opportunity and for your steadfast support of the Coast Guard. I'm humbled to serve and represent this incredible workforce, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. We do want to acknowledge the fact that Carol Jones, the wife of Master Chief Jones, who is the ambassador for the U.S. Coast Guard for families, and she's here today with us. So thank you for being here, Carol. And it's an awesome position. Now, Master Chief Jones, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Chairman Webster, Ranking Member Larson, Ranking Member Carbajal, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. Thank you for your continued support and the opportunity to appear before you today as the Master Chief Petty Officer of the world's greatest Coast Guard. It's my honor to represent the total workforce who tirelessly serve our nation. The support and resources provided by Congress are vital, and your continued investment in our personnel ensures the Coast Guard remains agile, capable, and prepared to meet the demands of all of our critical missions. As an essential part of the Department of Homeland Security, we focus on safeguarding our maritime interests, protecting natural resources, and ensuring the security of vital U.S. ports and waterways. Through integration with our sister DoD services and the joint force as a whole, we are prepared to address global threats from foreign adversaries. Our dual focus on Homeland Security and global readiness is vital for our own national security and economic prosperity. The demand for Coast Guard services to expand while the needs of our Sentinels have grown in complexity and scope. Whether executing search and rescue missions, defending our national security, enforcing maritime laws, or responding to natural disasters, our personnel remain always ready to protect, to defend, and to save. Our ability to safeguard U.S. interests in both the maritime domain and the broader defense framework depends on continued investment in our personnel, infrastructure, and our fleet. With the support and resources provided by Congress, the Coast Guard is positioned to remain not only a capable maritime service, but a crucial asset in maintaining the nation's strategic posture. Without doubt, the strength and success of our Coast Guard lies with our workforce, the talented people who serve with dedication and professionalism every single day. You've heard firsthand today the inspiring stories of bravery from our folks that have joined us. To meet the evolving demands of our mission, we need your support to focus on the development of our Sentinels from recruitment through retirement. By fostering an environment where continuous learning and improvement are valued, we empower members to adapt and excel. Experiences at Training Center Cape May and the Coast Guard Academy provide a vital foundation for service, And starting in fiscal year '25, we will reinforce that foundation with the Sentinel Transformation and Readiness Training course, which will prepare our newest enlisted members of the organization with practical skills and knowledge they need to contribute effectively from day one. The START program, a post-basic training program, focuses on our core values of honor, respect, and devotion to duty, while providing classes on financial literacy, emotional and social intelligence, accountability, and other traits essential for success in today's Coast Guard. Additionally, we're working to ensure that our core values are emphasized during leadership training at all levels and personnel evaluations of every pay grade, from the newest recruit to the most senior officer. This approach provides members clear guidance and purpose and ensures they understand how their actions and contributions to the organization impact the overall success of our Coast Guard. When members at every level recognize their role in shaping service culture, it fosters an environment of accountability and positivity. An empowered and supported workforce is better prepared to meet our mission demands. Furthermore, the Coast Guard's ability to recruit and retain talent is directly tied to how well we support both our members and their families. A future capable workforce is one that feels valued, not just in their professional roles, but also in their personal lives. Sentinels, which is why our recruitment and retention strategy is increasingly focused on creating a supportive environment that meets the needs of every Coast Guard family. By investing in the quality of total compensation and parity with Department of Defense, we can increase support for housing, child care, and spousal support initiatives, ensuring that our members and their families are fully supported, allowing them to focus on their mission with confidence. We ask for Congress's continued support in making these investments to secure the future of the Coast Guard and our workforce. I thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to answering your questions today.
Thank you both for being here today. Really appreciate it, and we'll look for either one of you to answer. I get the first 5 minutes of questions, and the question could be to one or both of you, and answer away. August 4th marked the 234th birthday of the Coast Guard, and the service is celebrating that birthday tonight here at the Capitol. And look forward to celebrating the more than 2 centuries of dedicated service the Coast Guard has spent protecting our nation's maritime interest and being with you this evening. The committee knows you represent the world's finest, best Coast Guard in the world. And however, this committee is well aware also of the aging infrastructure and workforce shortages and insufficient budget as they operationally constrained the Coast Guard for more than just this year, many years. What is the Coast Guard doing to address shortcomings in housing, health care, child care, recruitment, education, that affect retention and the daily lives of Coast Guard enlisted members and their families? So that's my first question.
Go ahead. Thank you for the question. The Coast Guard, as you got to hear over lunch, has some great people that are doing some great missions. And I think, as you heard from the Commandant earlier this year, she talked about where does the Coast Guard need to be. The nation is demanding a Coast Guard that provides all kinds of services. We need to be a $20 billion Coast Guard. We need to have $3 billion at least in our capital acquisition. And I think as we start to talk about those amounts of money and what we can do with them, we will stop making trade-offs between operations and support to our people and get to the things that you just talked about. How can we better do housing? With your help, we are building housing. We're building some great housing up in Kodiak. We are redeveloping housing in Puerto Rico, and we're looking for those areas where it's scarce to find housing on the regular market. Through your help, we're adding individuals to just about every one of our programs, especially those with mental health, to be able to respond to our Sentinels that are on the coast and in areas that are deprived of regular resources. So we thank you for that, but I think if we're going to do more, we're going to continue to work with you. We're going to continue to identify those areas where we have needs, and we'll look for your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Coast Guard has previously briefed the committee on its steps taken to recruit, and you've made many of the goals you had set for this year. Retention challenges, all those things, bringing additional recruits in and the criteria necessary to select them, and providing remedial support and helping recruits through Cape May and where the enlisted members of Coast Guard receive their basic training. How are these programs working, and are recruiting and retention numbers coming up?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. As you heard, we met our recruiting goal for the first time since 2017. For the first time in 8 years, the lines crossed this year, and we have brought in more people than we're losing this year. Our retention numbers are good and encouraging. In addition to the good news on the recruiting, not only do we meet our goal, we're going to bring in this fiscal year just short of 4,500 members, which is our best number since 2003. And the buses are full going into Cape May through December of this year as well. So we're off to a great start into next year as well. We have opened more recruiting offices with the help from Congress. Thank you for that. We also this year, we were the only branch of the military that did not have professional recruiters. Our folks, it could be any one of these four amazing human beings you had lunch with, could do their jobs, then step out, go be a recruiter, then come back into their jobs. This year, we stood up a talent acquisition specialist rating so that if someone goes in and they start becoming a recruiter, they find out that they love it and they're great at it, then we can keep them to be our recruiters for the rest of their career. So as you said in your opening statement, sir, just because we had a great year, the foot is on the gas pedal. We're not letting up. We need another 3 to 5 years like this to get rid of the workforce shortage, and so we're continuing to pour everything we can into it.
All right, my time has expired, so let me call on Mr. Van Drew. Or wait, we got these two guys first.
We'll let that guy go. Go ahead.
Yeah, why not? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll yield to our ranking member for questions.
Thanks. Thank you. Master Chief Jones, with the Coast Guard operating at 10% below authorized levels, it's resulted in closure or downgrade of dozens of stations and the early decommissioning of cutters. How has the workforce been impacted itself by the implementation of the alignment, the force alignment initiative?
Thank you, Rep. Larson. It's on some. I think at the very beginning, it was we had to communicate to the workforce on why we were doing that. What we could not continue to do was serve the nation at a 40,000 person level with 35,000 people. So in some of these areas where we're able to consolidate some stations going to scheduled mission only, what we have done, I'll use our opportunity when we were in Grand Haven together. Grand Haven was one of those stations where we consolidated in, and what the officer in charge, the Master Chief there, shared with us is that, number one, they have not missed a mission. They've met everything, but they have the people they need. He said they're busier than ever, but he also expressed that his crew is happier than they've been in a long time because as you see every time you get around, a busy Sentinel, it is a happy Sentinel. They come to work and they want to do great things every day. So it does not mean that we need to normalize being 5,000 people short. We're getting after that piece. But to date right now, as far as the executing of the mission, our Sentinels are in a really good place around the country. We need to do, in some areas, we need to do a better job of giving them the tools that they need so that they can do their job, especially when it comes to the maintenance of our assets.
Yeah. On the recruitment and retention number for this past year, hitting 4,800 or so, do you have an assessment yet about whether you sort of did the easy stuff, now it's hard, or is this, do you have a sense this is the foundation and it is carrying over into year 2 and then year 3 and so on?
And this is just an anecdotal assessment, sir. It is, we feel like a solid foundation has been laid. We feel like some of the, I guess, the hangover effects from trying to recruit in a COVID environment, we're back into the schools, we're back out there getting our word. One challenge that I gave the entire workforce when I came into this job, and I often shared with them, my favorite thing about our Sentinels is that they're humble servants of America, and you heard that at lunch. And the thing that frustrates me the most is they're humble servants of America. So I challenge them to get out and to tell their story, tell the story of what they do, tell those great stories that you just heard at lunch, because what we are proving is when people learn about the United States Coast Guard, people want to serve and become the United States Coast Guard. We just did a big recruiting event in Illinois this weekend, and talking to a lot of our recruiters. I asked them, hey, how's it going? What's working? Why is it working? And they all just looked at me without skipping a beat, and they said, because we have the best product in the world. They said, we have the product, we just have to get the word out. So we're very optimistic that solid foundation has been laid, and it's been proven because the numbers are already stacking up for next year, sir.
I'm sure it's kind of hard because you're combining a mission with recruitment. But in Chicago, I went out on the Chicago River and then out towards the lake with the Coast Guard. Y'all did the same thing in Milwaukee as well. It seemed like a good recruiting opportunity, but you can't put, non-coasties in positions in places physically where they shouldn't be during a high security time. But how do you take advantage of those kinds of, big opportunities in order to attract attention to the work that you do and then recruit?
So I give all the credit in the world to just the amazing innovation of our recruiting command and how they have, to be very honest, it took us a long time. We never thought we'd have a recruiting problem in the Coast Guard. And so it took us a long time to kind of reset the mindset. And they are extremely active in finding those things that all just naturally happen throughout a country. An Inland Rivers job fair in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that brings in 3,000 people from high schools, colleges, and trade schools. We send recruiters to events like that. And those are the things that happen all over the country. Where we're really pouring a lot of focus is, and not to take focus away from the coastal communities where people know us, but now we're trying to get our brand and kind of into the heartland where we do live and serve every single day. As an example, my wife and I, our first unit in the Coast Guard was in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Did not know that when I joined the Coast Guard. But so we live and work there every day. Now we're trying to get our brand to be as visible in the heartland as it is on the coast where people know us.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. You'll back.
Okay, Mr. Van Drew, you're recognized for 5 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. As you know, Training Center Cape May is in my backyard, so I'm acutely aware of the issues that most impact the Coasties' daily lives. We deal with it. Access to medical, schooling, childcare for their children are in desperate need of being addressed, but perhaps the most impactful is the availability of affordable housing. Housing costs in general are at an all-time high everywhere in the United States of America, but given that the service is coastal in nature, the enlisted workforce is resigned to find housing in some of the most expensive, competitive markets in the country. I have constituents now who have had to find more reasonable housing options, sometimes over an hour away from where they're located. The continental United States cost of living allowance is a taxable supplemental allowance for U.S. military members designed to help offset the price of living expenses in the highest coast locations in the continental United States. Given the higher costs along the coast, it's evident to me, at least, that an increased CONUS COLA is something that would greatly benefit Coasties and service members stationed in these areas. Master Chief Jones, thank you for being here today. I'm aware that the Coast Guard is concerned with being viewed as receiving preferential treatment. You don't, but I know that we're all concerned always about everything. But this is an avenue for the Coast Guard is this an avenue? Let me say it this way, I believe that we have, but is this an avenue the Coast Guard has explored to help the high costs that are located by these bases?
Thank you, Congressman. And yes, sir, when it comes to our basic allowance for housing and our cost of living allowances, we work hand in hand with the Department of Defense on those avenues. We are absolutely, I do believe COLA is an avenue in the continental United States where typically we did not receive COLA in a lot of the CONUS places. That is absolutely an avenue in addition to working towards, and thank you to Congress for working to bring us back to basic allowance for housing covering 100% of the rental market in an area. We're working to strive towards that. I will say, in an area like Cape May, as you know well, thanks to your support, that's one of our really good news housing stories, the Coast Guard housing there in Cape May. Our folks absolutely love living there. We have in Cape May, we have what we call a lot of repeat offenders. They go to Cape May, then they leave kicking and screaming, and they can't wait to come back to Cape May and be assigned there. But absolutely, we work hand in hand. I spent Monday this week with my DOD counterparts, working with folks from the Office of Secretary of Defense on these exact things, housing allowance and COLA.
I appreciate it, and hopefully we can work it out. Count me in any way that we can help. You're right, Cape May is a spectacularly beautiful area. Sometimes people have this vision of New Jersey, and I have the southern 1/3 of the state geographically, and it's an amazing area, and Cape May is particularly beautiful, but it's particularly expensive as well, as you know. Training Center Cape May has prepared a draft strategic development plan which identifies potential projects over a 25-year horizon. In a Coast Guard subcommittee hearing in June, as you probably know, I directly asked Vice Admiral Thomas whether he could commit to sharing this 25-year plan, and his answer was, quote, "If we have it, I don't know why we wouldn't share it," end quote. So I've requested this, I hope, as you know. If not, I'm requesting it again many times, and I will continue to pursue this. I'll continue to inquire about it, want to know about it, about this plan, and the subcommittee, I think, would like to know about it as well. It's not just for the edification of the subcommittee or for me. Having advanced awareness of the Coast Guard's goals would be greatly improve your daily lives, I believe, in this service. We as a Congress should be able to see what such a critical asset like Training Center Cape May is going to be doing over the next quarter of a century, and it's unclear to me why the Coast Guard has been unable to share this plan with members of Congress who work so hard to provide you with what you need. So I'm going to ask again. And I appreciate a follow through. Vice Admiral Allen, will you commit to me and this committee that you and your team can provide a copy of the strategic development plan for Training Center Cape May as soon as possible? Or, in all honesty, notify me, and that wouldn't be terrible. We should know, though, if there is not such a plan, or if that plan is not operative, it's not functional, if it's something that would just lead us astray, and if it would, then where do we go from there?
Sir, thank you for that question, and thank you more for the support you're providing to help us change the facilities there. I would tell you that that is a plan that I am looking into and is under development. I think we have some key pieces there as we start talking about the barracks, but we need additional money just to do some of the planning as we look at the facilities we need for our members there to train and be able to do that year-round. So yes, sir, I commit to come over. I'll sit with you. I'll show you what we have right now, and I'll talk to you about where we're going to develop a more comprehensive plan that looks at that whole plan.
And I would appreciate that, so if you would contact my office,
Yes,
I
sir.
would love to look at that, and what we could share with the chairman and the rest of the committee would appreciate that as well. As you know, I am supportive, and quite frankly, for those who haven't been to the barracks, and I will end with this, Chairman, for those that haven't been to the barracks, it does need some help, it does need some work, it could be better, especially for training year-round. Cape May, beautiful, kind of rough in the wintertime. I appreciate you being here, and I yield back to the chairman.
Well, now, Mr. Carbajal, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Master Chief Jones, I've had the opportunity to meet with coasties across the country and the world. I found that the best way to understand the challenges and problems that our coasties face is to ask the spouses directly. Since that is a big part of your job, I'm going to put you on the spot. What would you say are the top 3 things the spouses of coasties would say need to be addressed, changed, augmented? What are the top 3 things that you hear time and time again?
Thank you, sir. And obviously, I'm very careful because I know who's sitting right behind me. And what I normally tell people is I explain the role of the ombudsman at large. You know, when we travel, she doesn't travel as my wife. She travels as the Commandant's ombudsman at large. She is the #1 advisor to the Commandant of the Coast Guard on all things family. So I always say, so I listen to that person very carefully. Happens to be my wife, so I double listen to that person very carefully. And what Carol and some of the ombudsmen in the field created for us is the acronym CASH. Very, very simply. So it's 4 things, if you'll allow me, sir. The CASH, the C is childcare and schools. The A is access to quality mental and physical health care. The S is spousal employment, and the H is housing. And without fail, wherever we go, we hear about the CASH. Depending on where you are, where our Sentinels live and work, the order will change, but inevitably, those are the 4 things that come up, sir.
And very smart, a good way to remember them all when you're being asked about them. Vice Admiral Allen, suicide is still one of the highest causes of death within the military, whether it's during service or post-separation. So far this year alone, in 2024, the Coast Guard has lost 8 shipmates. What is the Coast Guard doing to combat the rise of suicide, and what does the Coast Guard do to care for members who need mental health assistance? I know you briefly touched on this earlier, but if you could expand, I would appreciate it.
Thank you for that question, and it's a terrible plague to even have 1 person in the service, let alone the 8 that we've seen this year. I think with the help of this committee, we've been able to increase some of those personnel that are going out and providing mental health services to our families. And I think that's important to say just families, because it's not only the active duty members that are getting hurt by this issue. While we concentrate on providing some caregivers there, we also have a tremendous network that we're doing. We have an EAP program that provides 6 sessions for anyone that's having mental health issues. We provide chaplains out in the field that are walking around, looking at our members, trying to help them. And then I think the most important thing we're doing is we're developing training that we're giving to not only senior leaders, but those people at the deck plate level, the people that you see behind me, because I think the biggest thing that we can do is provide support and care across our networks of personnel so that they can see when someone is starting to go into crisis and help get them a number of resources that they have. So thank you for your support on that.
And if I may, sir, one of the continual barriers that keeps me awake at night is removing stigmas associated with saying I need help. As you see these amazing Americans, they want to be there for everyone else. We have to remember to be there for themselves. And removing some of the misperceptions that if you ask for help, if you are Petty Officer Sizer, that you're not going to be able to fly. Or if you go seek help, that you're going to lose your security clearance. These are all fallacies. They're not true. So it's constant communication into those areas just to tell our workforce, it's okay if you break your ankle, you're going to be laid up for 6 to 8 weeks in a cast, and that's okay. If you're struggling with mental health, that is okay as well. And then one other addition is starting in, we were hoping about February, we're going to be moving from our Coast Guard support program to the military one-source program that DOD uses. We're getting on the contract there, which is a much better tool for our members and their families, especially when it comes into the mental health world.
Thank you. Vice Admiral Allen, your testimony recognized the current struggles the coasties face when it comes to finding affordable housing and housing that is within a reasonable commuting distance. How much Coast Guard housing exists on base right now, more or less, in some kind of, if you give us some kind of sense, and how much of that, what approximate amount of that percentage serves the Coast Guard?
Thank you for that question. So I would say the percentage of Coast Guard-owned housing is very small. I can get you that exact percentage, but overall, we mainly rely on BAH. However, we've got to be very deliberate about how we do that. In areas like Kodiak and areas along the coast, we have to have that kind of housing to be able to provide it. I was the district commander in Boston. Those housing units that we have up in Maine are just essential to what we're doing. That housing is almost always dedicated to Coast Guard people. We're always trying to keep it up to speed. We're trying to make sure that we're making improvements. To people like you that push us to do that in the right places like Santa Barbara, thank you very much. That is providing a needed resource for our people. And I'll get you that percentage, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
Mr. Ballin, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you, Admiral and Master Chief, for being here, and what a treat it was at lunchtime to meet these 4 brave individuals, and very proud of them, very proud of the Coast Guard. Southeast Texas, where I have the 36th district, shares some very close ties with the Coast Guard, from the storm response to keeping a watchful eye on the Houston Ship Channel and beyond. On behalf of my district, I want to thank all of you for keeping our region safe. I'd also like to briefly thank and give a special shout out to my scheduler, Miss Avery Hodges, who is going to be joining your ranks this year as a Coastie. And while we're going to miss her in our office, I have no doubt she's going to do a tremendous job and do great things in the Coast Guard. I'm very proud of her, and I'm looking forward to seeing her succeed in the next chapter of her life. So with that said, my first question is open to whoever would like to answer. Our country is facing new threats, both close at home and around the world. The Coast Guard is uniquely positioned to ensure the safety of America, but unfortunately, we've heard a lot about challenges in both the recruitment and retainment of service members. And while I'm told things are getting back to normal, and I think I heard that in one of your opening statements or answering a question, would you speak a little bit to the current, I think, if this is still true, we're still a 10% short. Is there still a 10% shortfall? Please briefly touch on both challenges to recruiting new members as well as challenges to getting Coasties to stick around and stay in the service. And in addition, please tell us some of the specific things that Congress can be doing to help alleviate these issues.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
And absolutely, we have made a tremendous dent in the workforce shortage. We were at one point, at the worst, we were close to 5,000 people short. We are now maybe in the 2,500 range, so we're making tremendous progress. We're still short, but I want to reassure we are not taking our foot off the gas pedal on this. Retention, we have always enjoyed an extremely high retention rate in the Coast Guard. It's our mission sells, our folks love what they do. We did see a slight drop in retention, 21, 22, 23 timeframe, or 21, 22. In the last 2 years, we've seen it go back to what our normal average retention rates are. A lot of philosophies on why that is, sir. What one that may be is that was kind of the 20-year mark for those that joined after 9/11. Great Americans that signed up, served their country for 20 years, and retired. One of the things that I'm really keeping a keen eye on, and we spent a lot of time talking with my DOD counterparts on Monday about, is now we're on the kind of on the first end, the first round of people being eligible to get out of the military that have the blended retirement system. We don't know if that's going to impact or not impact. So what we believe at the end of the day and what we're keenly focused on is the culture of our service, the mission of our service. Our people love what they do. And as long as our people serve at a unit where they feel like that they are trusted, valued, empowered, and included for themselves personally, themselves professionally, their families, then we can provide them the things that they need to make it easier for them to Coast Guard, then we're pretty proud of the product we have, sir.
Thank you very, very much. My next question, and it's a little off topic for today, but it's a technical question and it has to do with my district. In either case, in case either of you are up to speed on the situation with the Coast Guard MH-60 helicopter issues, the Coast Guard has recently made it known that the MH-60 Jayhawk's maximum flight hours have been reduced from 20,000 to 19,000 hours. And now 8 helicopters have been taken out of service, and more will be removed as they reach 19,000 hours. What sort of operational impact is the reduced helicopter fleet having on your operations, How will the reduction in maximum flight hours impact the services plan to transition to an all MH-60 fleet? If we have a little more time, I want to finish up to something else.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. Providing the right assets and safe assets to our personnel is the Coast Guard's #1 priority. We got to make sure that they're safe so that they come back. When we start looking at the 60s and what we're doing, we've run them very long. Most of the other services are not running them past 10,000 hours or past 12,000 hours. We now have a large majority of our fleet approaching 19,000 hours. In recent discussions with the OEM, Sikorsky, they alerted us to some information to start talking about what is the safe upper limit for those aircraft that they're operating. So out of abundance of caution, we took a pause. We are holding those aircraft that are above 19,000 hours on the ground until we can do a full assessment. And that's what we're currently in the process of doing to understand where that is and how that'll affect not only our near-term goals for operational readiness, but our long strategic plans.
My time's expired, so I'll yield back. Thank you very much, Admiral, Chief.
Thank you. Ms. Pelton, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Webster. Most of my questions have already been asked, but I wanted to ask you about childcare. I consider childcare a workforce issue, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about improvements made to your childcare situation.
Yeah, thank you so much. Obviously, childcare, anything we talk about in the cash world that I spoke from the Ombudsman at large, it is a direct tie to readiness, because when our members are worried about things at home not being taken care of, they're not focused on doing the dangerous missions that we ask them to do. In the childcare world, it is not a one-size-fits-all. In some places, the answer is Congress supports and we build and fund a brick-and-mortar child development center that the Coast Guard runs. In some places, it's working to get equal or better access to DOD facilities. And in quite a few places, it's the child care subsidies that y'all have worked so hard to give us, and we thank you so much for that. The next key step in the child care subsidies piece is we're currently working the MOA with the Navy. Congress gave us the ability to not necessarily have to pay those child care subsidies to a certain provider, but to be able to pay them directly to the member. So we're working an MOA with the Navy, and as soon as we get that done, then the subsidies can be paid straight to the member. Then the member can decide to bring someone in their home or whatever. So it's those flexible options in there are the best approach to child care.
Thank you. In the last few years, I've had the opportunity to get to know a couple of your enlisted members, and one of the things that has impressed me are the myriad training opportunities that you have. And I wonder, I heard about one training that was for a victim, to be a victim's advocate. Another training was de-escalation of volatile situations. And I don't know what exactly kind of program you have, but could you talk about some of the training opportunities that you give your enlisted folks?
Absolutely. One of the amazing, as you heard from all of the members today at lunch, what enabled them to do those amazing specific cases they talked about, but the work every day, is the training. And I think, and what I heard from them was they relied on their training, they trusted their training, they trusted the training of their shipmates, and they went out and they did great things. Like you mentioned, the victim advocates, Jess is a victim advocate at her unit. So a lot of what we have are trainings that are inherent to the Coast Guard. We have formal school training. Obviously Cape May is the basic training. Then the A school, which is where people go for their formal rating training. And then we have C schools, just a myriad of C schools, both on the officer and enlisted side, that train members to the daily jobs. But I'll tell you where I am the proudest of our workforce is a lot of what we do is daily on-the-job training. And they have formalized, PQ or personnel qualification standards they follow as they're doing this training. But a lot of what they do is that on-the-job training. The boat crews that you hear, the rescue swimmer, the fast response cutter out doing those missions is executed in that format of the on-the-job training.
Thank you. And you also really help young people figure out their finances, do long-term planning for retirement. There aren't many organizations that provide this kind of support for young people, and I just really want to commend you on that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Julie yields back. Mr. Azil, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all again for being here today. And we so enjoyed spending our time with you at lunch, and I appreciate you sharing stories with us. It's always good to be around you folks because you just make the room and the world a better place. But every time I come away from being around you, I'm more impressed. You defend more than 100,000 miles of U.S. coastline, and a lot of that is in my district. And I just can't thank you for all that you do enough. And I hope that some of these discussions that we're having today will bring a little light on how much the Coast Guard does with little resources. It's admirable, and you know, I want to make sure as much as I can to make sure you have everything you can to be successful in your jobs. Vice Admiral, you testified our people are the most valuable resource. I agree with you wholeheartedly. These men and women answer the daily call to protect us. Can you elaborate a little more on the strength of your people and the workforce, especially as we face recruitment and retainment issues across all the services?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that questions. I think as we talk a lot in the Coast Guard and as we get asked about things, we talk about the great ships that we're building, where they're being delivered from and how they're doing it. But I got to tell you, it's a piece of steel until we put a Coast Guard crew on there that brings them to life, that then executes the missions that we need. That said, I think we're providing what the nation needs. Sometimes I worry about the resources we're providing to give the crews the Coast Guard has and what they need to be able to do that mission every day. So with the help of Congress, especially with this committee, we just appreciate all things that you are doing to help with those intangibles, that training, childcare, housing, that's so important to keep their mind on the mission and not worried about how their family is doing, how they're gonna get medical. We, within the Coast Guard, have a lot of work to do to make that better for them, but we appreciate your partnership in doing it.
Thank you. The Coast Guard recently introduced a talent acquisition rating. What were some of the positives from that program, and how can we help you get it improved?
Hey, thank you for that question, sir. We, and I think I mentioned this earlier, we were the only branch of the military that did not have people dedicated to recruiting as a profession. You would take any one of these 4 amazing members sitting behind me, they would go do their tour at their unit, then they can go to what we call a special assignment, go be a recruiter for 3 or 4 years, or 4 years, and then have to go back into their rating because they need to do what they need to do there to advance. And what we found in one case 2 years ago, a bosun mate first class was the top recruiter in the Coast Guard, and she loved it, and she wanted to keep doing it, but she needed to go back afloat and get some bosun mate qual so she could advance to chief petty officer. So we finally realized, hey, let's give these folks the opportunity to, you know, because when they do that 4-year tour, it's year 3 when they really get kicking and they really get good at what they're doing. So establishing the talent acquisition rating is the best way to get about it. We are starting. That's not something that you can come in from boot camp and then go to an A school. We're going to require that. Right now, we're requiring an E6 level. I mean, kind of need to know the product you're selling, get out and live it a little bit. But we're looking to maybe expand that to the 2nd class level to equal our diver rating. But it's something that every recruiter I talk to is really considering lateraling over into that rating because they love their job.
Very good. I'd like to hear a little more about your personal story and how we can use those stories like yours and Vice Admiral Allen's to help address some of the challenges that you have today. And why did you join the Coast Guard?
The greatest decision I ever made in my life was to ask this lady behind me to marry me. The greatest decision we ever made was joining the Coast Guard.
Very good.
And quite frankly, I turned 23 in boot camp, so I had bounced around, done, I won't list how many freshman years of college I did before joining the Coast Guard, but I remember vividly one day, my father came to me and he goes, hey, you really like this girl, Carol. I said, Dad, I love her. And he goes, you better figure it out because she's too good for it. You're going nowhere. And so I needed something, and I have a great relationship with my dad. He's my but it was that kickstart. And I joined the Coast Guard thinking I was going to do 4 years and get out, and probably a lot of us, have that story. And here I am almost 3 decades later, and unfortunately in 2 years, they're going to have to send me home kicking and screaming. It is absolutely, we have loved every minute of every day. And when I've told y'all before I have the greatest job in the world, you got to see at lunch. I'm not making that up. I have the greatest job in the world.
I certainly believe that, just watching the testimonies and the stories that were told. And, I felt the same way in the police force when I joined. I was going to do my 20 years, and 42 years later, I retired and got elected to Congress. So anyway, thank you all. It's been a wonderful day to be around you and to hear your testimonies. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Ms. Golden, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, sir, and thank you so much to our witnesses, Vice Admiral Allen and Master Chief Jones. So good to see you again. And I'm just so grateful to you both for your service to our country. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Carol and her service as well, and commitments. We should have her here up on the witness stand for many of these. Nobody knows more about the life of a Coastie than our supportive spouses. I'm incredibly fortunate, as you know, to represent Coast Guard stations in Grand Haven and Muskegon. And as we've discussed, it is clear how the Coast Guard can provide fulfilling, service-oriented work. I know from meeting with them firsthand that our hardworking coasties are dedicated to safeguarding hundreds of thousands of U.S. coastline, both inland, as well as helping mariners in need. However, the Coast Guard continues to struggle, even though numbers are up in recruiting. We're not near the level that we need to, and we know that a huge part of this is, understanding the stability of the job. As we're slated to narrowly avoid a government shutdown this week, it is top of mind as I think about the fact that in 2019, the lapse in appropriations hit our coasties so hard, and their families, who didn't receive a paycheck in those critical 30-plus days. This is precisely why I introduced the Pay Our Coast Guard Parity Act, to ensure that the Coast Guard is appropriately compensated for their work during government shutdowns, just as other military service branches are and have been. For both of you, how could common sense bills like the Pay Our Coast Guard Parity Act level the playing field among different military branches and bolster potential recruitment prospects, as well as, Master Chief Jones, you talked about the mental health aspects of this. I think about just the dignity and respect that we owe it to our coasties to make sure that they are paid in the event of a shutdown. So those two aspects, sir.
I'll go first if it's okay, ma'am. Thank you so much. Great to see you again as well. What I learned in 2019 with the lapse in appropriation was that our workforce, I didn't learn, I knew they were the greatest in the world, but what I learned is they will run through a brick wall for us and for the nation. All they want to know is what's on the other side. And what I learned very clearly is the one thing that will bring our workforce to their needs is the unknown. And they knew we would eventually be paid. I mean, everyone knew that, but the fear in the eyes when we're going and talking to our members, and I think the sense of disappointment, the sense of feeling let down, and the biggest concern that we have as an organization is they still came to work and did their job every day, but were they as effective as they could have been? Because their minds were worried on, I can't pay this bill, can I get groceries, those things. And as I said earlier, resilience in our workforce, readiness in our workforce is all about having them, when they come to work, being fully focused on the mission, because in every story you heard at lunchtime, what any one of them will tell you is, I happen to be the one on duty that day. They kind of all shucks it away how amazing they are. I get the privilege of bragging on them all the time. But that could be this afternoon, that could be tomorrow, that could be at any time for any of them. So we need them to know that the things at home are taken care of.
Yeah.
So we thank you very much for that support.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for that question. I would say when you talk to Coast Guard people, they join for the mission, they join for the service to the nation, they join for the adventure. They do not join because we are paying them so much, right? And so even while we push forward to have better programs to make sure they're financially responsible and understand, too many of our people live paycheck to paycheck. And at the beginning of this hearing, we talked a little bit about how dispersed our workforce is compared to DOD. In DOD, if you're in housing, it doesn't matter if you don't have your BAH. In many of cases, our people, they didn't get BAH, and they were being threatened to be moved out of their houses. We are geographically operating across the globe every day, many times along our DOD partners. And it was, I gotta tell you, very tough for some of our young petty officers to not be getting paid while standing shoulder to shoulder to someone over in Bahrain that was getting paid, and their wife, their spouse, their family member didn't need to have. So thank you for your focus on that. Thank you for helping it, but very important issue for the Coast Guard.
Thank you so much. Over 2 centuries of service standing strong for us. You deserve the same from your government to make sure that you guys are ready and able to serve. Look forward to celebrating the birthday with you later today. Thank you. Yield back.
Okay, well, I want to thank both of our witnesses for coming and the others in the Coast Guard for coming and watching your government work, and it's really good to have you here today. The subcommittee stands adjourned.